ever since high school, I have worked in youth ministry in one form or another, and in those almost 5 years now, I've noticed a disheartening trend amongst students going from youth to college, and that's only 1 or 2 students in the graduating class are going to stay active church members past their sophomore year of college. And so in this speech, I'm going to highlight a few reasons why college-age students tend to drop out of church. I'm going to ask, is it the family? Is it the church? Or do we just live in a culture that is opposite to that of Christianity? But first, let's talk about the innermost circle of a person's life, their family. The family is oftentimes described as the most important part of a person forming their belief and moral systems. When it comes to church involvement, children tend to reflect that of what they see in their parents. Hawkins stated, however, fathers were often described as having minor involvement in Christianity or complexity lacking Christian affiliation, which may have affected their child's religiosity. Elizabeth saw having a non-Christian father as proof Christianity was not a necessary component to being an upstanding citizen. You see, this research in Hawkins' thesis goes to show a direct correlation between a parent's walk with the Lord and that of their child in their adult life. Building off of the previous point, another factor that's going to play, that plays a role in church attention, is how much of a good relationship the parent has with their child. In the book Why They Stray by Dr. Steve Parr and Tom Kreitz, they highlight several reasons from their lives and others' lives why students start wandering away from church in their later years. And this is what Dr. Tom Kreitz had to say about his experience with his parents' faith. He says, their commitment to the church and steady example at home demonstrated to me their faith was real. They loved serving the Lord in his church and taught me to love it too. Now, a study done by a lady named Riscata looked how the relationship between a pastor affected that of their child's spiritual fervor in their later years. And she found that the more intimacy the child and father had, the more likely the child would be to be religiously similar as an adult to a parent. Now, one would say that the family, others would say that the family plays a role, but not the most important role. They would say that the church has the sole responsibility on college retention. Many critics have stated that the church doesn't act like it cares or isn't doing enough to show the youth that they are in touch with the rest of the church. This leads to resentment or apathy for the church. A major theme one is going to find when they ask about college dropout rates is the church doesn't care enough about them or their individuality. Kisman states, young adults are more interested in doing hands-on missions rather than viewing missions as merely financial support for someone on the other side of the world. Suits and hymns are not the obstacles for younger generations, but the lack of joy that accompanies the hymns. See, Kisman is stating that these younger generations feel like they're being put in a box that the older generations feel comfortable in, that they're used to, but they don't recognize these boxes. They don't feel comfortable in these boxes, and they'll go somewhere where they do feel comfortable, where they can fit into their own box. And Aaron Bard does a very to-the-point analysis onto what he believes the future of the church will be. When he says, in other words, the problem in the American church is not theirs, it's ours. We need to spend the coming years taking a long, hard look in the mirror, listening more than we talk, if we really want to stem the tide of the departure we have created. See, Bard and others hold that if the church fails to fit in with the younger generation, we're going to see an increase and a continued drop in college students attending church. Another thing one is going to find is that the church just isn't doing enough to show the younger generations that church is essential. Rayner states that, but the reality is that most churches in America are doing little to become essential to the lives of their members. Indeed, church is seen by most young adults today as one option on many for their lives. I think Harry Powell wrote that more than any single program or event kids were far more likely to feel a significant part of their local churches when adults made effort to get to know them. See, experts like Bart, experts like Rayner and Powell, they're putting pressure on the church to show the younger generation just how essential church is for their lives. If the older generations don't make a point to show that to the younger generations, how will they know the beauty of being a part of the bride of Christ? Now, one last argument that should be discussed is how much our cultural attitudes affect these college dropout rates in church. One researcher makes a claim that a factor in college students dropping out of church is that the culture around college-age students is opposite to that of the church. Sarah Vaughn wrote a thesis on why millennials are leaving the church. And in that thesis, she interviewed several students who were active members of youth, and eventually found their way not being active members in a church in their college years. And in one interview, this is what one person had to say to her. He says, I think the biggest disconnection in Christianity is to be a Christian requires that you are tethered to a book that has some problematic topics, which you have to explain to others. I just think so many people in our generation are like, why would I want to label myself into a church with things I can just say I spiritually believe in? See, the millennial generation is one of the most diverse generations. And with that new generation, with that diversity, comes new ideas, new people, new beliefs, and many of those things have become our cultural norms, for good, for bad. And then Hawkins states that participants were very rarely exposed to positive LGBTQ plus messages in Christian spaces. See, acceptance is a major theme of these new cultural norms, and a major theme of this generation, the younger generations. And with that acceptance, when someone isn't accepting of a particular person or belief, they're labeled as bigoted, judgmental, and just are going against what we as society has found to be culturally right or okay. And this is where the church has found themselves for the last several years. The church is largely been against the LGBTQ plus community. And with that, they're seen as being opposite to what the younger generation view as culturally okay, culturally right. So in conclusion, I've discussed three major reasons why college-age students are dropping out of church. I talked about, the issue with the family, the issue with the church, and is there an issue with the culture around us? See, being connected to a church is one of the most important aspects of a Christian's journey. Being connected to a church family, so many students, after they leave high school, get wrapped up in life, and they find themselves walking away and just not being a part of the community anymore. And they miss out on the joys of community, of the community of the bride of Christ. Now, one thing that we can do to help this issue is to look at all the reasons why college-age students are dropping out of church, and to formulate new plans on how to deal with those issues. I hope this speech has been informative, and thank you for listening.